Finally, I won't have to see your face anymore, you freeloader. Get out! My mother-in-law shouted at me. You should be grateful we tolerated your parasitic lifestyle for this long. I see. I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for everything until now, I replied, holding back tears. I quickly packed my belongings and left the house where I had been living with my in-laws. As I walked out, I noticed my mother-in-law smiling with satisfaction. I laughed sadly, knowing that only I understood what would come next for that household. My name is Emily, a 32-year-old woman who works from home. It's been 5 years since I married John. We were happy at first, but around our 4th year, things began to change. My father-in-law, who had been healthy, suddenly fell ill, and we had to take care of him. That's why we moved in with my in-laws. We didn't expect to stay long, but since John is an only child, we had no choice but to take on the responsibility. I even thought about quitting my job to become a full-time caregiver. Luckily, my boss let me work from home, so I managed to keep my job while taking care of things at home. Life in my in-laws' house was chaotic from the start, but soon it got worse. The real problem was my mother-in-law's harassment. Emily, how long are you going to laze around? Get up and start cleaning and making dinner already, she'd snap. I'm not being lazy, I'd try to explain. What do you mean? You're always just clicking away on your computer. You must be slacking off and just browsing the web. She couldn't understand that working on the computer didn't mean wasting time. I had worked hard to get permission to work from home and didn't want to throw away the skills I'd built. So, I juggled housework, caregiving, and my job to keep my income stable. After 3 months of hard work, I managed to match my previous salary. I was relieved because, honestly, we couldn't survive on John's income alone. Finally, I thought we'd have some financial stability, and I hoped we could start saving, but for some reason, money just kept disappearing. I couldn't figure out why, so I looked into our expenses. That's when I discovered that John had been spending a lot, and my mother-in-law wasn't any better. John loved showing off, and he'd use our credit card to pay for lunches and parties for his colleagues. As for my mother-in-law, she took up multiple hobbies with her friends and spent a lot on class fees and socializing. While they threw all the housework and caregiving onto me, they splurged freely. I couldn't take it anymore, since I was paying for everything with my income and couldn't even think about saving. I decided to talk to them. John, Mother, you both seem to be spending too much money. At this rate, we'll run out of savings. Can you please try to cut back a bit? But instead of listening, they lashed out at me. What? You expect me to be seen as a stingy man in front of my colleagues? John shouted. It's okay if you don't always pay for them, even if you don't show off. No one will think you're stingy, I told John. Besides, I try to be thoughtful at my office, making sure we all work well together. You act like I don't understand anything about work. Of course, you wouldn't understand, John shot back. It's fine to treat people to lunch, but how does taking them to a girls' bar relate to work? I asked, frustrated. Aren't you just doing it because you enjoy it? How do you know that? He snapped. You always come home drunk and brag about it yourself. That's because it's more fun than talking to you, John sneered. Mom, you get it, right? John turned to his mother. Exactly. I attend my classes to enjoy my limited time with my friends. She chimed in. Are you telling me to stay cooped up at home? You're such a terrible wife. There's no reason for you, who only does housework, to tell us what to do. I do work, I said firmly. I'm earning money and helping with the household, and I also take care of your father, not just the housework. Don't lie. My mom's the one who takes care of Dad, and since you don't go to an office, you're probably not even making much. Who do you think you are? Acting so proud when you're just a part-timer? I was stunned. It seemed like this mother and son duo didn't understand that I was really working hard, taking care of the house, looking after my father-in-law, and earning an income all at once. Even worse, it seemed my mother-in-law had been telling John that she was the one caring for my father-in-law, making me look like a lazy housewife. I considered leaving many times, but I stayed because of my father-in-law. He was always kind to me since I married John. He would say, "Emily, I'm really sorry that such a great daughter-in-law like you has to put up with so much." "Father-in-law, I don't mind taking care of you," I'd reassure him. "I feel guilty needing care, but I feel even worse seeing how my wife and son treat you. You're being taken advantage of, aren't you?" Well, yes. With just John's income, we wouldn't be able to get by. "It's my income that keeps us afloat," I admitted. "I know. It's all thanks to your hard work that we're managing," he said softly. It turned out that he'd known about the situation all along. Whenever I helped him, he'd thank me and speak to me kindly. I loved my father-in-law, so caring for him never felt like a burden. I worried about what would happen to him if I left, so I decided to stay and care for him until the end. About a year later, my father-in-law passed away. During his funeral, I cried the entire time. Seeing me in tears, my mother-in-law coldly said, "Emily, why are you crying so much?" even though she didn't shed a single tear herself. My mother-in-law didn't seem sad at all when my father-in-law passed away. So, I naturally said, "Of course I'm sad. I've been taking care of him all this time." Hearing this, my mother-in-law suddenly got furious. "How dare you? It's like you're saying I never took care of my husband." But the truth was, she barely took care of him. She didn't help with the housework or caregiving, saying she was too busy with her hobbies. Yet, she always found time to go out. She acted like a victim, telling everyone that I was bullying her and even faked crying in front of relatives. From the outside, it looked like I was the awful daughter-in-law. People would say, "Stop being so harsh on your mother-in-law." Some even took her side and blamed me. I was just mourning my father-in-law's death, but even strangers were criticizing me. It made me so angry that I decided to stay away from the relatives. Then John, my husband, came over to complain. "You embarrassed my mom in front of everyone, didn't you?" "What are you talking about? I don't understand. I was just crying for your dad, and your mom came up to me with rude comments. That's all. I heard you said she did nothing for Dad." "I didn't say that. I was just sad that your dad, whom I cared for, passed away. Maybe it came off that way because, honestly, she didn't do anything, but it's the truth." "Are you looking down on my mom?" "No, I'm just being honest. And if you're so mad, you should have helped out. Don't you think you should have taken better care of your own dad?" "Why are you blaming me? I had work. It's your job as a housewife to take care of him." "That's unfair. I have a job too." Our argument got heated, and worried relatives stepped in to stop us. Even though the fight ended, we didn't speak to each other for the rest of the day. Later, after the funeral was over, a lawyer gathered everyone to discuss the inheritance. "I'd like to go over the will regarding your father-in-law's inheritance," he said. "It states that the house and the land will go to his son, John, while the remaining money will be split evenly between his wife and his daughter-in-law, Emily." "What? Why would Emily get a share of the inheritance?" my mother-in-law snapped. "I'm his wife. If John gets the house and land, the rest should be mine." "Your husband wanted to show his appreciation to Emily for taking care of him. It was his wish to leave her part of the inheritance as a thank you. This is his decision, and it cannot be changed." "So, that's it," my mother-in-law said with a sneer. "I see now. Emily was only taking care of him because she was after the inheritance." "Why would you say that?" I asked. shocked. Why else would you dedicate yourself to caregiving? She replied coldly. I've had a good relationship with my father-in-law ever since we got married. I took care of him to repay his kindness. If you think that's impossible, then why did you push all the caregiving onto me? I shot back. Don't talk nonsense. I get it now. So keep your mouth shut, she snapped. With our lawyer present, my mother-in-law couldn't say anything inappropriate, but she glared at me in frustration. She finally grumbled. So he really decided this? Well, it's just a token of appreciation for caregiving. I guess there's no other way. The lawyer cleared his throat and continued. There's one more note from your father-in-law. He wanted Emily to know that she no longer needs to care for him. At that moment, my mother-in-law's expression changed. She suddenly smiled brightly, as if she had figured something out. Oh, I get it now. What do you mean, John? My husband looked puzzled by her reaction. It means that Emily is no longer needed in this house. She won't be taking care of my husband, so the inheritance was just severance pay, not gratitude. My mother-in-law twisted my father-in-law's words to suit her own interpretation. But in reality, this was exactly how my father-in-law and I had planned it. Before he passed, he told me he wanted to set me free from this house after his death. He used his will to trick my husband and mother-in-law, making it easier for me to leave without a fight. My mother-in-law, who had no idea of our real intentions, thought she was kicking me out. I put on my best shocked face and cried out, "Oh, Father, why would you do such a thing? See, even my husband didn't see you as a precious daughter-in-law," my mother-in-law said triumphantly. Then she turned to John. "John, you don't need Emily anymore, do you? Just divorce her already." I looked at John with teary eyes. "John, you wouldn't really want to divorce me, right?" He stayed silent for a long time. Then, finally, he said, "Yeah, it does seem better to get a divorce. I've got the house, and Mom has the money. I won't have to worry about care in the future, and I don't have to deal with Emily anymore," my husband said, looking relieved. "I see, so that's how it is. Sorry, but could you leave me alone for a moment?" I replied calmly. "Understood," he said, sounding indifferent. Realizing I no longer had a place in that house, I pulled out a piece of paper from my drawer and handed it to him. "We fought before, remember? That's when I went to pick this up." It was the divorce papers. Without hesitation, my husband signed them. "Finally, I don't have to see your face anymore. You're just a freeloader who doesn't work. Get out! I've put up with a parasite like you for too long." "I see, okay, I'll leave. Thank you for everything so far. Speaking of which, since the lawyer is here, I want to confirm something. There's no need to divide any property, right? I've received enough from my father-in-law's inheritance." "That's right. How considerate of you, Emily. After all, I've been living on my earnings alone. It would be shameless of you to want more." "Well, you're right," I agreed, not wanting to argue further. "All right, the discussion is over. I'll leave as soon as possible." I quickly packed my belongings and left the house I had been living in for years. My mother-in-law watched me leave with an indescribable look of joy on her face, unaware of what awaited them. After leaving, I immediately submitted the divorce papers at City Hall and headed to the apartment I had rented in advance. Stepping into my new place, I shouted out loud, "Yes, I'm finally free! I'm free!" The words echoed in the empty room, and I couldn't help but smile. I was overjoyed to be free from the painful married life. I couldn't thank my father-in-law enough for helping me escape from that house. Since then, I've been enjoying a comfortable life on my own. I started working remotely while at my in-laws' place, but now that I had my own space, I could dedicate more time to my job. As a result, my income increased, and I was able to live luxuriously. without anyone bothering me. Then, one day, I received a call from my ex-husband, John. "It's been a while. What do you want?" I asked. "Emily, please help us. We're struggling to make ends meet," he pleaded. "Is this a joke? Weren't you the ones who told me to get lost?" But even though we're getting the same salary as before, for some reason, we don't have enough money. We can't live like this. "Oh dear, that sounds tough," I said mockingly, before dropping the final bombshell. "Well, that's because my salary isn't going into the household anymore." "What? What do you mean?" he asked, confused. "Don't you get it? You couldn't afford your lifestyle with just your salary. You never noticed because I was covering the expenses," I explained calmly. "No way. You were making that much?" "Yes. Back then, I was earning around $4,800 a month, but you never cared to ask, did you? And now that I have no distractions, I'm earning even more," I said, chuckling. Over the phone, I could tell my ex-husband was shocked. "Emily, how about we live together again?" "Huh? What are you talking about? It was a mistake to kick you out. It's not too late to start over, right?" I sighed. "It's obvious you just want my earnings." "No, that's not it. I've realized that I still love you, Emily," he tried to convince me. "Don't talk nonsense. I have no desire to return to your place," I replied firmly, ending the conversation. "What happened to the inheritance your mother received? You should still have plenty of money left, right?" I asked. "Well, it's almost gone," he replied. "There's no way. She got around $100,000, right? How could you spend all of that so quickly?" "We spent a lot on shopping and trips abroad, and we lost nearly half of it gambling at casinos," he admitted. I couldn't believe it. "You two are hopeless." I'm speechless. "But I'm not part of your family anymore, so it's not my problem, and I don't want to get involved." "Don't be so cold, please. Help us," he begged. "I don't care. I'm ending this call. Don't ever contact me again." With that, I hung up the phone and immediately canceled his phone contract. After that, I completely lost touch with my ex-husband and his mother. About a year later, I passed by their house and noticed it had been torn down. They probably lost it because of their financial problems, but it's none of my concern now. As for me, I decided to use my free time to pursue a new interest and joined a wine class I'd always been curious about. There, I met a man who was 2 years older than me and showed genuine interest in me. After a year and a half of dating, we got married. He's a kind and thoughtful person, doing very well at a well-known company with a great salary. He respects my career, and we have a happy marriage built on mutual respect. Lately, I've been thinking that perhaps this happiness is a gift from my late father-in-law.